All right, today we have honey mushroom, and I just want to show you where it's growing really quick. It's a rainy day, so we're gonna pick this, we're gonna cook it up, and we're gonna use it in grilled cheese sandwiches, but I want to move this pretty quick. But if Teresa, if you could just get a shot of this maple tree we're near, because when you pick a mushroom, and don't go too far away from me because our microphone isn't that good. When you pick a mushroom, you really want to pay attention to where it's growing. So I see that it's near a maple tree, and if you can get this pit here, Teresa, this is where a tree was that it's probably the wood that's still in the ground that is feeding this armillaria. This is Armillaria tubescens, which is one of the species in this honey mushroom. And I try to pull up the whole thing. I go into the ground a little bit. So take this whole cluster.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And if you could follow me, I'm gonna carry it over to our covered shelter. Yeah, this is Armillaria tubescens, also known as the ringless honey mushroom. You better be careful on this hill.
I'm trying.
Come on this side. So yeah, some things to look for with the ringless honey mushroom is one of the things I look for is a cluster. We're in North Carolina, so there are different species of honey mushrooms in the Armillaria group, and they have slightly different characteristics depending on where in the country you find them. But here, what I run into the most is Armillaria tubescens, which is the ringless honey mushroom. So if I pick one from this cluster, I always find it growing in clusters pretty much. And there's no ring, which distinguishes it. There's no little veil or ring. It distinguishes it from other honey mushrooms. It's got a stalk that's really tough and fibrous and will often taper at the base. So it's a little bit thinner at the base. It's pretty characteristic of these honey mushrooms. I also look for white spore print. So sometimes it's been raining, so they're kind of washed off, but you can find them right on the mushroom caps underneath the other ones. You'll see white dust. So it gives you an immediate spore print. And that distinguishes it from some other things you might confuse it with. Other thing I look for is white or light colored gills underneath. Oh, it's got a little like centipede on it. You get off, buddy. And I look for a cap, oh, I just stuck them on the mushroom, that's kind of flat. They tend to get really flat like that. And also, I hope that you can pick it up in the video, but these little blackish hair looking things, that's another thing that when I spot these mushrooms, I look for the little tufts. It looks just like, I don't know, I call them hairs, but somebody else might see it differently, but these little dark
Yeah, it's not
marks.
picking up completely on the video, but there is that darker circle right in the middle.
Yeah.
And you just trust us that it does look kind of fuzzy.
Yep, and this stalk is really woody, and when you eat them, you pluck off the woody stalk. And I'll probably move the little critter there. And that's what we're gonna cook up and make into grilled cheese sandwiches. And some other interesting things about honey mushrooms, Armillaria, is the largest organism on this earth is an Armillaria. It's the size of a city. And it's said to be, what was it, 2,000 years old?
Something like that.
I mean, really old. So this is a really incredible group. And the mycelium, this is the fruiting body of this organism, the mycelium that's underground. Yeah, and when we say largest organism, we're talking about the mycelium. So it'll send up little tufts of honey mushrooms, but the mycelium itself is that big and old. And if you've ever heard of foxfire, like when mycelium goes in the bark or rotten wood and it glows, it's phosphorescent at dark, that's this mushroom. And so apparently there are some people in the subarctic region that will mark their trails at night by taking wood that's been infected with Armillaria and just laying it along the trail, so you've got this glowing trail to follow.
Nice.
So is there anything you want to add that I'm forgetting about honey mushrooms?
This is one that, Gumby, you've said it before, it kind of just starts to speak to you, so it's not completely difficult. We actually just talked to a guy in this little covered shelter we're at. It's not exactly one of those that you're like, oh, this is a honey mushroom, but once you start to use your field guide and you get a kind of a feel, a connection, a relationship with this mushroom, then you start to see it and you're like, oh yeah, that's honey mushroom.
Yeah, it's a little bit more challenging to identify than some, so this is one to be careful with. There are some poisonous mushrooms that can look similar, but like I said, look for the tapered stalk, usually a ring around it if you're not in the southeast, but this is a ringless honey mushroom. The little tufts, I can see it pretty good on this one, just the little black fibrous top, and put it on a piece of paper, particularly like a piece of paper that might be half dark and half light, and try to get a spore print. The white spore print really separates this from other mushrooms.
And the other thing was, we cook these really well. We usually cook mushrooms in butter. And it said that some people may experience a stomach upset if the honey mushrooms are growing on either buckeye, which is a poisonous tree, right?
Yep.
And also hemlock trees, right?
Yeah,
So
so
you
that's
wanna
why I was
be-
trying to emphasize, like, pay attention to where it's growing.
Yeah, you want to be aware of where it's growing, what it's growing on. And
And it's a good flavor. Another way to tell is you can take a little bit and taste it. Yeah, and it's got a bitterness, so that's another way to tell that it might be a honey mushroom. Some people can't pick up on the bitterness, but I spit it out. I make sure I cook it really good before I eat it, but just to get the oh yeah, there's the bitter. And it's called honey mushroom because of the color, which can be pretty variable, but it's usually like a yellowish, brownish, you know, whatever. Just like a honey can be variable. It's not sweet. It doesn't refer to the taste, but it is a good flavor, but it's just not a sweet flavor.
It smells really good when it's cooking. That might be the butter, but I still have a memory of it smelling really good when it's cooking.
And for these little larvae that you might find, you know, if it's overcome with larvae, I leave it alone. For the most part, I shake out the larva like this, and then I cook it. And any larva that's in there, hobo protein. So I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, looking forward to cooking these up. And usually if I was going to use it in another way, I might dice them up. But for a grilled cheese sandwich, it's really good just to have them whole like this. Throw them in the frying pan, a little bit of butter, and then add them to your grilled cheese sandwich. And that is so awesome. Any final words?
Thank you, honey mushroom, and hope you enjoy our video.
Yeah, and one more thing. When you find these, often I'll see a whole neighborhood overtaken with them. They'll come out around here like September or November, and when you see them, you often see them all over the place. Honey mushrooms are very common and plentiful.
Oh, that's right, because they have runners, the rhizomorphs. They're like, they kind of are grouped all together, right?
Yeah, and if you see these in a neighborhood, there's a chance it could be the same organism, a mycelial network underneath the neighborhood,
Right.
sending up the different clusters. So keep that in mind. It's an amazing species, even if you don't feel confident enough to eat them. And if you are going to eat them, do your own homework. I try to remember this all the time to tell people, look it up in a field guide, and if you aren't confident, don't eat it. And if you are confident, start off eating just a little bit. Cook it well, see what happens. Don't make a huge big meal of it. Go in slow. You don't know how your body's going to react to a mushroom that other people are just fine with. So be careful, but don't let that stop you, because most of the things growing in an average garden are in the deadly nightshade family, so they could kill you quicker than a lot of this wild stuff. Always be careful. Know what you're doing. And thank you, our malaria.
Thank you.